The year is 1916. Outside, the Russian Empire is collapsing under the weight of World War I. But inside a St. Petersburg palace, a drama is unfolding that is almost unbelievable. A single man, a peasant turned mystic, is the target of a conspiracy. The assassins will use cyanide, enough to kill 5 men. They will shoot him 4 times at point-blank range, beat him, and dump his body into a frozen river. And yet, this man will still struggle. He will survive the poison, the bullets, and the brutality, forcing his killers to commit one final, desperate act. This is not fiction. This is the true story of Grigori Rasputin, the man the press called the Mad Monk, and the impossible murder that historians are still trying to understand. His death was the final, desperate act of a dying empire, but his life remains an enigma, filled with power, prophecy, and an unshakable hold over the most powerful woman in Russia. But who exactly was this peasant with the piercing eyes, and what incredible secret allowed him to survive where others would have instantly perished? Rasputin was born Grigori Yefimovich Novik in a remote Siberian village in the 1860s. His early life was anything but mystical. He was a simple, semi-literate peasant, a married farmer with several children, known for his rough manner and his intense piety, though, crucially, this piety was always mixed with a rumored wild streak. This dual nature would define his entire life. He was not officially a monk. He was a starets, a holy man or wanderer, a spiritual pilgrim who had undertaken long journeys. In his 30s, Rasputin left his village and began his spiritual travels, absorbing various folk beliefs and developing a profound hypnotic gaze that many found instantly compelling. This was his first great talent, an ability to captivate and convert. By 1903, Rasputin arrived in St. Petersburg, Russia's capital, in a city ripe for spiritual fads. The aristocracy, bored and disillusioned, was obsessed with mystics, seances, and the occult. Rasputin, with his Siberian accent, unwashed clothing, and raw, powerful spirituality, was an immediate sensation. He preached a message of repentance achieved through sin, a dangerous theological concept that fueled his reputation as a debauched holy man. His unique blend of raw peasant wisdom and intense, almost animalistic charisma quickly moved him through the highest circles of society. But his real target and his true destiny lay within the impenetrable walls of the Tsarist court. The imperial family, Tsar Nicholas II and Empress Alexandra Feodorovna, lived under a constant shadow. Their only son and heir, Tsarevich Alexei, suffered from hemophilia, a bleeding disorder that was, at the time, a death sentence. A simple bruise could prove fatal. The Empress, desperate and consumed by anxiety, sought help from countless mystics and charlatans. In 1905, Rasputin was introduced to the imperial couple, and his life and the fate of the Russian Empire changed forever. The relationship was simple and profound. Rasputin could stop Alexei's bleeding. Modern historians and medical experts debate the exact method. Did he use simple folk remedies, like herbs, or was it purely psychological? It's highly theorized that Rasputin's calm, commanding presence soothed the boy and his mother, causing the anxiety and stress that exacerbate bleeding to subside. He was the one person who could bring peace to the distraught empress. To Alexandra, Rasputin was not a peasant or a degenerate. He was a man of God, sent by Providence to save her son. This made him absolutely untouchable in her eyes. The Tsar himself, though often uneasy, had to accept him. Rasputin's influence was now centered on the most critical, vulnerable point of the entire Russian state, the succession. Mostly the empress, a small circle of deeply loyal women at court, and various desperate petitioners who truly believed he had healing powers or could intervene on their behalf with the Tsar. They saw him as a spiritual beacon, a symbol of the true Russian soul. Rasputin's presence in the palace was met with immediate, violent opposition. The Tsar and his family, the Russian Orthodox Church, the nobles, and the public all turned against him. They saw a grotesque, manipulative peasant holding the entire royal house hostage. They viewed him as a national disgrace and a foreign spy, due to the empress being German-born. They spread vicious, exaggerated rumors of his drunkenness, orgies, and sexual misconduct, many of which were fabricated or heavily amplified by a hostile press. They saw his influence as destroying the monarchy from within. When World War I began in 1914, the Russian Empire entered a phase of terminal decline, and this elevated Rasputin's influence from a matter of private faith to a national catastrophe. When Tsar Nicholas II made the disastrous decision to personally command the military front in 1915, he left the entire governance of the vast empire in the hands of the Empress Alexandra. She, in turn, relied almost exclusively on Grigori Rasputin for guidance, often writing to the Tsar with suggested changes that were, in fact, Rasputin's own directives. This arrangement meant that Rasputin was now effectively controlling the Russian government from behind the throne. He exercised his power primarily through ministerial appointments, recommending and dismissing key officials, from cabinet ministers to bishops, based on personal whim, alleged spiritual advice, or simple political maneuvering. He consistently backed incompetent favorites for critical positions, plunging the government into chaos. This corruption and incompetence, which Rasputin fueled, was seen by nearly everyone outside the palace as the direct cause of Russia's devastating military failures, the economic collapse, and the starvation spreading through the cities. The military leadership in particular was aghast that a Siberian peasant was dictating military strategy through the Empress. For the political class, the issue was no longer one of court gossip. The removal of Rasputin had become a patriotic necessity. The chaos surrounding Rasputin was public knowledge, largely because his behavior outside the palace walls was completely unrestrained. He flaunted his immunity, knowing the Empress protected him. Special units of the Okhrana, the Imperial Secret Police, were assigned to protect Rasputin, but their duty also included monitoring his every move. Their reports detailed a man who spent his nights moving through high-end restaurants, drinking heavily, and receiving a constant stream of petitioners. These reports noted that he frequently took female followers, from the highest nobility to desperate commoners, into his hotel rooms, staying all night. While these reports were not always explicitly sexual, they provided the anti-Rasputin faction with irrefutable, documented evidence of his scandalous and inappropriate conduct, confirming to the public and the church that he was a manipulative fraud. This evidence was circulated discreetly among the elite, cementing the belief that Rasputin was a cancer on the royal family and the nation. The idea to murder Rasputin had been attempted before, most notably by a peasant woman named Kionia Guseva in 1914, who stabbed him in the stomach, though he miraculously survived. This time, the plot was hatched by the highest echelon of Russian society, men convinced that regicide was the only way to prevent revolution. The key conspirators were Prince Felix Yusupov, one of the wealthiest men in Russia and married to the Tsar's niece, Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich, the Tsar's cousin, and Vladimir Purishkevich, a prominent right-wing politician known for his fiery speeches. Their motivation was clear: remove Rasputin to save the monarchy before the revolution came. The conspiracy was meticulous, born not out of rage but cold, calculating political necessity. The initial full plan was reportedly finalized during a conspiratorial meeting on a moving train near St. Petersburg, a location chosen specifically because it was seen as the most secure place to speak openly without the Okhrana's surveillance. The first step was securing the location. Yusupov's luxurious Moika Palace in St. Petersburg was chosen. It had a private soundproof basement room, perfect for the deed, and offered multiple escape routes. Second, they had to devise a method that would be untraceable. Poison was the answer. Their lead medical accomplice, Dr. Lazavert, secured enough potassium cyanide to kill several people, grinding it into pastries and a special Madeira wine. But the biggest challenge was getting Rasputin alone, past the ever-vigilant eye of the Empress and his small devoted circle. Yusupov, using his charm and high social status, cultivated a friendship with Rasputin over several months. The decoy was the bait. Yusupov claimed his beautiful young wife, Irina, was ill and wished to meet Rasputin for a blessing and a spiritual consultation. This appealed to both Rasputin's ego and his supposed healing nature. The night of December 29, 1916, was the night. The conspirators fabricated a party upstairs, playing a gramophone loudly to create the illusion that the palace was full of guests. They even asked a co-conspirator to dress up in Irina's clothes and walk around upstairs to fool any onlookers. Rasputin arrived just past midnight. Yusupov escorted him to the basement room, decorated specially with antiques, a crucifix, and a bearskin rug, presenting the image of a quiet, spiritual consultation room. Yusupov offered the poisoned wine and the pastries, which were laced with a massive, deadly dose of cyanide. Rasputin, perhaps suspicious or simply not hungry, ate the pastries slowly, barely touching them, but he happily drank the wine. The plot was set, the poison delivered, and then nothing. Yusupov watched in horror. The cyanide, which should have killed Rasputin almost instantly, had no effect. Rasputin simply chatted, asking for more wine. Yusupov frantically ran upstairs to consult his co-conspirators. They were terrified. The poison had failed, and Rasputin would soon expose them. This is the moment the rational plan dissolved into pure desperation. Yusupov returned with a hidden revolver. He told Rasputin, "Grigori Yefimovich, you had better look at the crucifix and say a prayer," and shot him once in the chest at close range. Rasputin collapsed, seemingly dead. The conspirators came down, and they celebrated. They left the room for a moment, convinced the deed was done. But Rasputin was not dead. Yusupov returned to examine the body. As he bent over, Rasputin's eyes snapped open. With a burst of impossible strength, he lunged at Yusupov, grabbing him by the throat and uttering a low, guttural prophecy. "Felix, Felix, I shall tell the Empress everything." Rasputin then burst through the locked door and fled into the palace courtyard, scrambling across the icy snow. The sound of the struggle brought the other conspirators, including Vladimir Purishkevich, who chased Rasputin with his own revolver, striking Rasputin 3 times, including a shot to the head. The conspirators finally subdued him, clubbing him repeatedly for good measure to ensure he was dead. They then wrapped the body tightly in a heavy velvet curtain, drove it to the Malaya Nevka River, and dumped it into the icy water through a hole they chopped into the surface. Their ordeal was finally over, or so they thought. The conspirators' escape was surprisingly easy due to their high rank. They immediately fabricated a cover story, and the police were hesitant to investigate anyone so close to the imperial family. Yusupov and Grand Duke Dmitry were placed under house arrest and then quickly exiled, a remarkably light punishment that showed the Tsar himself was unwilling to prosecute members of his own family, though he was deeply distraught over the murder. When Rasputin's body was recovered from the river 3 days later, the autopsy revealed the terrifying truth. He did not die from the cyanide or the initial gunshots. The official report noted his lungs were filled with water, meaning Rasputin was still alive when he was thrown into the icy river. He had struggled to free himself underwater before finally succumbing to hypothermia and drowning. This discovery only amplified the myth and the terror surrounding the Mad Monk. Why did the cyanide fail? Scientific research now suggests that the massive amount of sugar in the wine and the pastries may have chemically neutralized the cyanide, or perhaps Rasputin possessed a rare genetic resistance. The true miracle was his will to live. The murder of Rasputin, meant to save the monarchy, was instead the final blow. The Empress was distraught, and the public knew the truth despite the conspirators' clumsy attempts to cover it up. The cover-up failed, the killers were merely exiled, and the imperial family's fate was sealed. The revolution came just 10 weeks later, fulfilling the darkest prophecies associated with the Siberian peasant. Rasputin's death solved nothing, but it left behind a profound question. Did his unshakable faith grant him a supernatural resilience? Or was he simply a man whose survival instincts defied all known science? And what incredible world-altering secret did Rasputin take with him to the bottom of the frozen river? Prince Yusupov, who lived in exile until his death, maintained throughout his life that he had done a patriotic service to Russia. He gave numerous interviews detailing his role in the assassination and expressing no regret, believing he had sacrificed his own moral standing to save his country from the chaos Rasputin created. The murder of the Mad Monk, intended to save the Romanov dynasty, failed completely. Just 10 weeks later, the February Revolution began, and the Tsar's reign crumbled. The final, impossible moments of Rasputin's life became an omen for the collapse of the Russian Empire itself. This chilling tale reminds us that some of history's greatest mysteries are not found in ancient ruins, but in the final, impossible moments of a single human life. And if you are as fascinated by the mysteries of history as we are, be sure to like and follow at Epoch Stride for more. Thank you for sticking with us until the very end. Tell us in the comments, do you believe Rasputin was a man of God or a clever charlatan? What other impossible survival stories should we investigate next?